Welcome to this episode of TheSquare. Today's topic is something we're calling the data center next door. And with me is Jim Cober, who's a principal in our data centers sector. And thank you for being here. So tell me first, before we get into the data center next door, tell me a little bit about why you're a data center architect.
Well, I got into data centers. Early grew out of some of our corporate practice, a lot with a lot of our clients that both had, businesses that were dependent upon data centers, and then eventually into clients that were focused on providing data center services. So, grew out of kind of the natural evolution of expanding our services to our clients. It was also something that was really interesting to me in the sense that it really involved a lot of technology, a lot of integration, and a lot of problem solving.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, having been in a couple of our projects. And just for the uninitiated, data center actually covers a whole host of operations. It's not just storage.
No. Within the IT environment, there are a wide range of actual processes that happen. The biggest one is actually the processing. I mean, it's actually compute, right? That's the biggest sector. But storage is another part of it that's there for retrieval.
So data centers have kind of been traditionally these big windowless buildings out in the rural areas, and there's good reason for that. You want them to be safe and secure, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But it is something where you're starting to see kind of trends towards new kinds of data centers.
Yes, and the issue there initially was resiliency, and those facilities still exist. They will still continue to exist. It's just the market has changed into one that was data centers owned by enterprise level clients, and to ones that are basically co-location data centers where you're leasing environments. It's also changing in the sense that those clients that are selling data centers to clients who are leasing from the data center providers creates a condition where there's an interaction that's happening, and they're honestly selling, and in that sense they need buildings that kind of are responsive and attractive. And as they're moving inward, like you said, they're not say inward, but they're finding other locations that are not just the hidden data centers, if you will. And in that sense, they need to fit in with the environments. We're finding those going into developments that have requirements for certain visual aspects to them, to just being things that are prominent and are visible, and therefore need to kind of have a look that fits in with their environment.
Are you finding that there are data centers that are not just exclusively data centers? You're finding them being a part of developments or a part of, I saw an article where there's a school that's taking certain part of the school, making it into a mini data center, using it during the day for their needs, and then leasing out the compute after hours. Is that a trend?
It is, and it's a trend that's not singular. There's a lot of different ways that is happening. So there are a lot of different applications for data center these days, and there's also a lot of different ways that they're being manifest. That is driven both from kind of the investments people are making, but also kind of where that compute is needed. So as we've all heard kind of the term about 5G and edge data centers and stuff like that, this idea of needing the data center closer to the compute and all about response time and reduced latency is driving data centers to find new and unique applications. But it's also that there's just an awful lot of different ways people are finding to use data center capacity.
So and that really comes down to density, right? Like density plays a key role in finding where to put one.
Density does, and with density comes risk. Risk is really one of the key design aspects in any kind of data center. Really almost every conversation about data centers revolves kind of what is the risk to making one decision over another decision. The issue there is that with density, there's just more happening in that smaller space, so that is slightly riskier. But if you have network diversity or other resiliency aspects that you can counter that, yes, density is coming along, and we are seeing more and more of that out there in the market.
And so primarily, I would imagine technology takes a role in that.
Oh, yeah, of course. And this is the integration of technology is kind of where some of the magic is. For a data center architect is how do you bring both the mechanical, electrical systems, which are the building systems, but they're very, very different in how they find their way into application and integration in the data center than in kind of some other buildings, because of density, because of the intensity of the processes happening within the building. But also then on the IT side, you have all of that technology, and there are definitely influencers between them, and there's still a lot of evolution to happen with how those two systems of technologies start to communicate to make more and more efficient data centers.
Where do you think some of that evolution in terms of data center design might go?
It's going to be finding creative ways to deal with heat, basically. With density comes heat, and the heat both on the development, on the true technology side, is happening out there. We're seeing people coming up with new ideas on how to deal with that intense heat so that it can be then dealt with and moved away. And then also just in, like you mentioned, in smaller data centers in more locations, that's going to be another interesting development that will be happening as we move through the edge and distributed data center development.
And it's you were mentioned earlier, as you move kind of into some of the more urban areas, you're having to actually think about what the data center looks like. So it's no longer just about safety and security and kind of the needs of what's inside the building, but it's also the outside of the building and what that looks like.
Yeah, they're compounding, right? That you can't do away with one because you have the other. So you still have to accommodate all of those security and all of those risk-related issues, and how do you reduce those or address those with how does it fit in the environment that it needs to? And it's not an old problem. I mean, this happened with the phone network issues years ago when they needed to put network capacity near residential areas, and they solved that problem then, and we're just solving it now. It's just there's a lot more power, therefore a lot more cooling that happens that makes it just that much more challenging.
What does it mean for the average person in terms of the advantages to having some of these data centers in the middle of where they live or where they work and play?
It's having honestly, it's what we have today. It's the compute in palm of your hand, right? It's the compute that's happening remotely, but it seems like it's happening on your phone, but reality is it's happening kind of in a data center. Having that closer is just going to allow that to grow and to find its way into more aspects of our lives than we kind of know today.
Okay, random question. If you weren't a data center's architect, what would you be?
I don't know that I know the answer to that.
Would it be something in technology?
It might be. I mean, each of those fields is interesting enough to me that it would be something that I might get into. But I think it's the overarching aspect of the process that's also very intriguing.
Awesome. So with data centers and the way they are very power centric, are there opportunities to look at sustainability and look to these projects as something that can kind of lead the way there?
Data centers are unique in that aspect, and that they obviously utilize a lot of power. But because they use a lot of power, that we work very, very hard to make them as absolutely efficient as possible. There's a lot of work out there in the data center market to create conditions for offset of the power consumptions. A lot of our clients are investing in their own power systems. A lot of our clients are putting together programs that allow 100% green power consumption out of the data centers. And it's just, interestingly enough, data centers is one of our largest sectors with LEED certified projects.
Really?
In the sense that once again, working very, very hard to make them as absolutely efficient as they can be.
So data centers, just because of the nature of what they are, have this relationship that's very closely tied with technology. So as an architect, how do you kind of navigate that to make sure that not just the technology of today, but clients' goals for the future is also kind of accommodated?
Yeah, I mean, With data centers is one of the unique things is there's a lot of technology that finds its way. We're integrating that. We're finding ways to bring to synthesize all of those different aspects into a solution for the client, right? So we need to know enough about all of those different technologies, whether that's on the building system side or whether that's on the IT technology side, the security side, how all those systems, enough about them to know how to integrate them and to be sure that the project is on a path that is balanced, meets the client's goals, and is application for their business. So that's one of the kind of more enjoyable parts of the process is kind of getting into those other technologies enough to kind of see it through.
Okay, so let's get 5, 10, maybe 15 years down the road. What is the landscape of data center design? How has that evolved?
That's going to be interesting to see because there are a lot of things happening out there. People are trying new ways. There's a lot of very experimental stuff out there in solutions, but there's also, once again, a lot of focus in efficiencies and the network side of that, which is kind of on the IT. But those are going to find themselves in unique platforms, in unique solutions out there in our environment. So I think there will be a wide range of answers, some of which are versions of what we're seeing today, and others are going to be very unique solutions that people are going to be a little surprised at when they look back at in that period of time. And yet the uptake will probably be pretty quick because it's happening at the rate of technology change, which is a little different than the rate of kind of the built environment change. So.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Jim, and sharing all that with us. Hopefully you were able to learn something new, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on The Square.